Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy killed 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock. Streaming only on Peacock.
She was this moneyed, social girl.
Ghislaine Maxwell had it all until she met Jeffrey Epstein.
Maxwell helped connect him to the wealthy and famous.
Then it all came crashing down.
Ghislaine Maxwell's charged with enticement of minors, sex trafficking of children, and perjury.
Now a new 3-part documentary reveals her story.
How on earth could she have got to this place?
Epstein's Shadow, Ghislaine Maxwell. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
Stories and content in Weird Darkness can be disturbing for some listeners and is intended for mature audiences only. Parental discretion is strongly advised.
Welcome, Weirdos. I'm Darren Marlar, and this is Weird Darkness. Here you'll find stories of the paranormal, supernatural, legends, lore, crime, conspiracy, mysterious, macabre, unsolved, and unexplained. If you're new here, welcome to the show, and if you're already a member of this weirdo family, please take a moment and invite someone else to listen. Recommending Weird Darkness to others helps make it possible for me to keep doing the show. And while you're listening, be sure to check out WeirdDarkness.com, where you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Minds, MeWe, and more, along with the Weird Darkness Weirdos Facebook group. Coming up in this episode… Sadly, the past is gone and cannot be changed, nor can we see into the future to prepare for what's to come. We live in the here and now, and that is a constant. Or is it? We'll look at the mystery of time slips. Edvard Munch's painting, The Scream from 1892, is a masterpiece of the macabre, and when you hear him describe the piece and his inspiration for it, you'll realize the painting is a lot closer to the artist's life than anyone would want. Have you ever wondered why ghosts in the movies are so often female? What makes female ghosts scarier than male ghosts? I mean, aside from that whole "a woman scorned" thing. Well, we'll look at some famous and infamous female ghosts and urban legends from around the world. Now, bolt your doors, lock your windows, turn off your lights, and come with me into the Weird Darkness. Time is a funny thing. There never seems to be enough. Yet there is an infinite amount. Time slips through moment upon second into eternity past, yet present to begin the future. Time is thought to be unstoppable in its relentless push towards the future. Humans perceive themselves as bound up in time as an insect in amber, forever imprisoned and forced to reconcile with the regularity and inevitability of change. The past is gone, the present fleeting, and the future is unknown. Or is it? If a Merseyside policeman by the name of Frank was asked, he may have an entirely different opinion on the subject of time. On a sunny Saturday afternoon in July of 1996, Frank and his wife Carol were visiting Liverpool's Bold Street area for some shopping. At Central Station, the pair split up. Carol went to Dylan's bookshop and Frank went to HMV to look for a CD he wanted. As he walked up the incline near the Lyceum Post Office/cafe building that led onto Bold Street, Frank suddenly noticed he'd entered a strange oasis of quietness. Suddenly, a small box van that looked like something out of the 1950s sped across his path, honking its horn as it narrowly missed him. Frank noticed the name on the van's side, Kaplan's. When he looked down, the confused policeman saw that he was unexpectedly standing in the middle of the road. The off-duty policeman crossed the road and saw that the Dillon's bookshop now had the words Crips over its entrances instead. More confused, he looked in to see not books, but women's handbags and shoes. Looking around, Frank realized people were dressed in clothes that appeared to be from the 1940s. Suddenly, he spotted a young girl in her early 20s, dressed in a lime-colored, sleeveless top. The handbag she was carrying had a popular brand name on it, which reassured the policeman that maybe he was still partly in 1996. It was a paradox, but he was relieved, and he followed the girl into Crips. As the pair went inside, Frank watched in amazement as the interior of the building completely changed in a flash to that of Dylan's bookshop of 1996. The girl turned to leave, and Frank lightly grasped the girl's arm to attract attention and said, "Did you see that?" She replied, "Yeah, I thought it was a clothes shop. I was going to look around, but it's a bookshop." It was later determined that Cripps and Kaplan's were businesses based in Liverpool during the 1950s. Whether these businesses were based in the locations specified in this story has not been confirmed. Frank's experience is not that unusual in the realm of strange phenomenon. There's even a name given to such events – time slips. A time slip is an event where it appears that some other era has briefly intruded on the present. A time slip seems to be spontaneous in nature and localization, but there are places on the planet that seem to be more prone than others to time slip events. As well, some people may be more inclined to experience time slips than others. If time, then, is the unmovable force that physicists say it is, why do some people have experiences that seem to flaunt this concept? Much of ancient Greek philosophy was concerned with understanding the concept of eternity, and the subject of time is central to all the world's religions and cultures. Can the flow of time be stopped or slowed? Certainly some mystics thought so. Angelus Silesius, a 17th-century philosopher and poet, thought the flow of time could be suspended by mental powers. "Time is of your own making. Its clock ticks in your head. The moment you stop thought, time too stops dead." The line between science and mysticism sometimes grows thin. Today's physicists would agree that time is one of the strangest properties of our universe. In fact, there is a story circulating among scientists of an immigrant to America who had lost his watch. He walks up to a man on a New York street and asks, "Please, sir, what is time?" The scientist replies, "I'm sorry, you'll have to ask a philosopher. I'm just a physicist." Time travel, according to modern scientific theory, may still be beyond our grasp. Yet for a number of people who have had unusual time slip experiences, time may be easier to circumnavigate than expected. A classic example of a time slip could be seen in a note from Lynn in Australia. Lynn had read the book Time Travel, a How-To Insider's Guide from Global Communications, published 1999, and she thought her experience was similar to others featured in the book. In 1997, Lynn lived in a small outback town that was built in 1947 and had changed little since that time. "I was driving toward the main intersection of the town when suddenly I felt a change in the air. It wasn't the classic colder feeling, but a change, like a shift in atmosphere. The air felt denser somehow. As I slowed at the intersection, I seemed to be suddenly transported back in time to approximately 1950. The road was dirt, the trees were gone, and coming toward me to cross the intersection was an old black car, something like a Vanguard or old FJ Holden. As the car passed through the intersection, the driver was looking back at me in total astonishment before he accelerated. From what I could see, he was dressed in similar 1950s fashion, complete with hat. This whole episode lasted perhaps 20 seconds and was repeated at least 5 times during my time there, always at the exact spot. I tried to make out the registration plate number, but the car was covered in dust." Lynn wondered if there is someone out there still living who remembers seeing a strange sight at the intersection back in the 50s, of a weird car with a bug-eyed woman at the wheel. Derek E. tells another interesting time slip story. When he was a child, his father was a taxi driver in Glasgow, Scotland. One day in the late 1960s, Derek's father was driving in the north of the city along Maryhill Road near Queen's Cross, one of the older parts of town and once its own separate community outside the city. "One minute it was now," Derek wrote, "cars, buses, modern clothes, tarmac roads, etc., and the next thing my dad knew, he was in some earlier time. It was certainly pre-Victorian given the clothes he described people wearing. Horses, rough road, lower buildings, people in rough clothes and bonnets, etc. It lasted as long as it took him to be aware of it, and then it vanished, and he was back in now." Derek also reported that in the 1980s he and his wife were on a driving holiday in the North York Moors in England. They went to a tiny coastal village called Stathis, which had a steep, winding, and narrowing road down to the harbor with the entrance to the houses and narrow footway at a higher level of 3 or 4 feet. We parked at the top of the village, hamlet really, when the tourist buses and cars had to stop and made our way down on foot. What I remember is a brilliantly sunny day with lots of other people around, but as we made our way down, it just suddenly seemed as if no one else were there but my wife and me. An old woman appeared on the footway opposite us. It became cooler and duller. She asked, in what seemed to be an old-fashioned and very polite way, what year it was. Now, lots of old people get confused, and it could have been that. But what I remember vividly is her black clothes. Handmade, rough, and with hand-sewn buttons, really big compared with modern ones. Her shoes were very old-fashioned, with much higher and chunkier heels than you'd see an older person wearing nowadays. In the time it took me to turn to my wife and say, "Did you see that?" she was gone. The sun was back, and so were all the people. My wife had also seen the same old woman and felt the same chill. Derek's experience seems strikingly similar to traditional ghost stories. Many ghost sightings are readily explained as individuals who appear out of their normal location or time, but often the ghost also seems to change the surroundings of the witness, giving the impression of a time slip. What is open to question is whether these are glimpses into another time, or does the witness or the ghost actually travel in time? Perhaps it's simply different sides of the same coin. Martin Jeffrey, co-editor with Louise Jeffrey of the website MysteryMag.com, speculates that time slips can be recreated or induced using a trigger factor, which occurs when one is interested in his surroundings but is not concentrating on them. A slip occurs at a precise place and moment, and the witness is thrust seemingly into another time. Jeffrey cites the case of Alice Pollock, who at Leeds Castle in Kent experienced what could be called a classic time slip. Alice was experimenting in Henry VIII's rooms by touching objects in an attempt to experience events from another time. After a period of receiving no impressions whatsoever, the room suddenly changed. It lost its modern, comfortable appearance to become cold and bare. The carpet had disappeared, and there were now logs burning on the fire. A tall woman in a white dress was walking up and down the room. Her face seemed to be in deep concentration. Not long after, the room returned to its original state. Later research found that the rooms had been the prison of Queen Joan of Navarre, Henry V's stepmother, who'd been accused of witchcraft by her husband. It could be that the witness triggers time slips, whether they blank their mind at a precise moment and the slip occurs, or the witness touches something that holds the memory of a previous time. The simplest explanation is probably the psychometric hypothesis, noted Colin Wilson and John Grant in The Directory of Possibilities. In the mid-19th century, Dr. Joseph Rhodes Buchanan of the Covington Medical Institute performed experiments that convinced him that certain of his students could hold letters in their hands and accurately describe the character of the writer. He became convinced that all objects carry their history photographed in them. Buchanan wrote, "The past is entombed in the present. The discoveries of psychometry will enable us to explore the history of man as those of geology enable us to explore the history of Earth. Clearly, psychometry may be seen as a form of time slip." The classic of time slip tales occurred in August 1901, when 2 English women on holiday, Annie Moberly, principal of St. Hugh's College in Oxford, and Dr. Eleanor Frances Jourdain visited Paris. After a short stay in the capital, they went to Versailles. After visiting the palace, they began searching for the Petit Trianon, but became lost. As they wandered the grounds, both women began to feel strange, as if a heavy mood was oppressing their spirits. 2 men dressed in long, grayish-green coats with small 3-cornered hats suddenly appeared and directed the women to the Petit Trianon. They strolled up to an isolated cottage where a woman and a 12- or 13-year-old girl were standing at the doorway, both wearing white kerchiefs fastened under their bodices. The woman was standing at the top of the steps, holding a jug and leaning slightly forwards, while the girl stood beneath her, looking up at her and stretching out her empty hands. She might have been just going to take the jug or have just given it up. I remember that both seemed to pause for an instant, as in a motion picture, Dr. Jourdain would later write. The 2 Oxford ladies went on their way and soon reached a pavilion that stood in the middle of an enclosure. The place had an unusual air about it, and the atmosphere was depressing and unpleasant. A man was sitting outside the pavilion, his face repulsively disfigured by smallpox, wearing a coat and a straw hat. He seemed not to notice the two women. At any rate, he paid no attention to them. The Englishwomen walked on in silence, and after a while reached a small country house with shuttered windows and terraces on either side. A lady was sitting on the lawn with her back to the house. She held a large sheet of paper or cardboard in her hand and seemed to be working at or looking at a drawing. She wore a summer dress with a long bodice and a very full, apparently short skirt, which was extremely unusual. She had a pale green fichu or kerchief draped around her shoulders, and a large white hat covered her fair hair. At the end of the terraces was a second house. As the two women drew near, a door suddenly flew open and slammed shut again. A young man with the demeanor of a servant, but not wearing livery, came out. As the two English women thought that they had trespassed on private property, they followed the man toward the Petit Trianon. Quite unexpectedly, from one moment to the next, they found themselves in the middle of a crowd, apparently a wedding party, all dressed in the fashions of 1901. On their return to England, Annie Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain discussed their trip and began to wonder about their experiences at the Petit Trianon. The two began to wonder if they had somehow seen the ghost of Marie Antoinette, or rather if they had somehow telepathically entered into one of the Queen's memories left behind in that location. As if to confirm their suspicion, Moberly came across a picture of Marie Antoinette drawn by the artist Wertmüller. To her astonishment, it depicted the same sketching woman that she had seen near the Petit Trianon. Even the clothes were the same. Intrigued by the growing mystery, Jourdain returned to Versailles in January 1902 and discovered that she was unable to retrace their earlier steps. The grounds seemed mysteriously altered. She then learned that on October 5, 1789, Marie Antoinette had been sitting at the Petit Trianon when she first learned that a mob from Paris was marching towards the palace gates. Jourdain and Moberly decided that Marie Antoinette's memory of this terrifying moment must have somehow lingered and persisted through the years, and it was into this memory that they had inadvertently stumbled. What can be concluded, then, from these anecdotal tales? Did these people actually travel, albeit briefly, into the past to glimpse scenes that once were? Or were they caught up in a form of haunting where, like an old movie, they saw a scene that had somehow been implanted in a location and allowed to play back again for those sensitive enough to pick up the lingering impressions? However, if time slips are a form of haunting, what explanation can be offered to the experience of a Mr. Squirrel, who in 1973 went into a stationer's shop in Great Yarmouth to buy some envelopes? He was served by a woman in Edwardian dress and bought 3 dozen envelopes for $1. He noticed that the building was extremely silent. There was no traffic noise. On visiting the shop 3 weeks later, he found it completely changed and modernized. The assistant, an elderly lady, denied that there had been any other assistant in the shop the previous week. Even though the envelopes disintegrated quickly, Mr. Squirrel was able to track down the manufacturers, who said that such envelopes had ceased to be manufactured 15 years before. How can a haunting produce such physical evidence? Time slips are often accompanied by feelings of depression, eeriness, and a marked sense of silence, deeper than normally experienced, posits author Andrew Mackenzie in his book Adventures in Time – Encounters with the Past, drawing this conclusion based on the Versailles time slip accounts as well as his own interviews with people who've experienced the phenomenon. It's interesting to note that on August 10, 1901, the day of Annie Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain's experience, electrical storms were recorded over Europe and the atmosphere was heavy with electricity. Could this have led to an alteration in the local temporal field around Versailles? Perhaps there is a natural phenomenon that, under the right conditions and location, can produce briefly a doorway to another time and place. Even though this may sound outrageous, this natural time machine could show that modern concepts and perceptions of time need to be seriously reconsidered. It may be that the past and even the future might be closer than thought with current scientific theories. With the right frame of mind and the right natural conditions, the barriers of time and space that have traditionally kept mankind locked into place may finally be broken, allowing the mysteries of the world and the universe to be finally revealed. Coming up, have you ever wondered why ghosts in the movies are so often female? What makes female ghosts scarier than male ghosts? I mean, aside from that whole "a woman scorned" thing. We'll look at some famous and infamous female ghosts and urban legends around the world. But first, Edvard Munch's painting, The Scream from 1892, is a masterpiece of the macabre, and when you hear him describe the piece and his inspiration for it, you'll realize the painting is a lot closer to the artist's life than anyone would want. That story is up next on Weird Darkness. Hey Weirdos! Weird Darkness has been nominated for a podcast award in 4 categories this year: Storyteller Drama, Society and Culture, True Crime, and the coveted People's Choice category. You can vote for Weird Darkness in all 4 categories at the same time by visiting podcastawards.com. Once you sign up to vote, you'll find all 4 categories in the left-hand column. People's Choice at the very top, and then bottom left-hand column for the remaining 3 when you scroll down. While it's still on your mind right now, please go vote. Only you, my weirdo family, can help Weird Darkness become an award-winning podcast this year. Go to podcastawards.com and vote for Weird Darkness in the Storyteller Drama category, the Society and Culture category, the True Crime category, and the People's Choice category. And thank you, Weirdo family, for nominating and voting for Weird Darkness.
Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy killed 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock.
What do you know about Dr. Dunch?
Based on the unbelievable true story.
I can't make sense of this.
Dr. Death.
Dunch has 2 deaths that we know of.
Starring Joshua Jackson with Christian Slater and Alec Baldwin.
I am going to fix you.
All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock.
What do you know about Dr. Dunch?
Based on the unbelievable true story.
I can't make sense of this.
Dr. Death.
Dunch has 2 deaths that we know of.
Starring Joshua Jackson with Christian Slater and Alec Baldwin.
I am going to fix you.
All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock.
If you like Weird Darkness, you'll love the audiobooks I've narrated, many of which are absolutely free to listen to, including free audiobooks by Stephen King, H.P. Lovecraft, Charles Dickens, and more. You can see all of the free audiobooks I've narrated on the audiobooks page at WeirdDarkness.com. I was walking along a path with 2 friends. The sun was setting. Suddenly the sky turned blood red. I paused, feeling exhausted, and leaned on the fence. There was blood and tongues of fire above the blue-black fjord in the city. My friends walked on, and I stood there trembling with anxiety, and I sensed an infinite scream passing through nature. In describing the sensation that inspired his iconic masterpiece, The Scream, in 1892, Edvard Munch might well have been talking about his own tragic life. Not only was his childhood marked by the death of his mother and his favorite sister from tuberculosis, but Edvard was often sickly himself. His father, Christian Munch, raised his surviving children in an extremely religious environment, including telling his children that their mother was looking down from heaven at them whenever they misbehaved. There was also a history of mental illness in the family. One of his younger sisters was diagnosed with mental illness and spent much of her life in an asylum. Edvard would eventually comment that, "I inherited 2 of mankind's most frightful enemies, the heritage of consumption and insanity." Starting from adolescence, Edvard's art came to dominate his life. He disappointed his father by becoming a painter, which his father considered to be an unholy trade. Over the next several decades, Edvard Munch's artistic talents were increasingly recognized. Unfortunately, the troubles in his life increased as well. The death of his father left his siblings destitute, and Edvard went into debt to support them all, including his sister in the asylum. As he grew more prominent in art, he became more self-destructive as well. In addition to his chronic alcoholism and tobacco use, he also began taking a bizarre cocktail of nerve and pain medications to keep himself going. His health was never good, so his drinking and hard living sent him into a downward spiral. Munch's relationship with his mistress, Tula Larson, ended after an accidental shooting that permanently damaged 2 of his fingers. He was frequently given to public brawls and drunken binges that alarmed his friends and family. Although he was getting frequent commissions and public honors, Munch hit rock bottom by 1907. Actively delusional, he initially checked into a clinic in Copenhagen but fled during the admission interview. Due to Munch's worsening condition and failure to seek help on his own, his friend, Emanuel Goldstein, forced him into the private clinic of Dr. Daniel Jacobson in Copenhagen. Although his medical reputation wasn't the best, Dr. Jacobson ran a successful clinic that catered to well-to-do patients. On admission, Jacobson diagnosed Munch as suffering from dementia paralytica, linked to his alcoholism. Nowadays, he'd probably be diagnosed as either delirium tremens or Wernicke's encephalopathy. As it was, he was lucky not to get a diagnosis such as general paresis or neurosyphilis, which might have led to him being locked up for life, which was why Munch had been afraid to seek help in the first place. In many respects, the rest cure that Jacobson prescribed for Munch was, if you'll pardon the expression, just what the doctor ordered. On admission, Jacobson had Munch placed in a locked room for 8 days until his hallucinations and other symptoms came under control. Jacobson took Munch off the cocktail of drugs and alcohol that he had been taking for years and gave him no other medication except for sleeping drops, probably chloral hydrate. During his stay at the clinic, Munch was given ample bed rest, good food, fresh air, and regular sun baths that helped him immensely. Some of the other treatments that Jacobson prescribed were a little more bizarre, however. In addition to electrification, which basically amounted to running mild electrical currents through the patient's body using a special generator, the Jacobson Clinic also specialized in special treatment baths. These baths involved diluted carbonic acid, with extra ingredients including, among other things, iron fillings, salt, soda, potash, sulfur, fir needles, oak bark, malt, and bran. For patients suffering from hallucinations, the baths could also include milk or bouillon and even blood from freshly slaughtered animals, and I'll bet you thought that bloodbath was a figure of speech. Munch was fortunately spared the blood baths, but otherwise had the full course of treatment that Jacobson's clinic had to offer. Munch actually enjoyed the electrification sessions. At one point, he drew a cartoon of himself wired up to the electrical apparatus with the caption, "Professor Jacobson passing electricity through the famous painter Edvard Munch, changing his crazy brain with the positive power of masculinity and the negative power of femininity." While he was fond of the female staff, with whom he often flirted, his relationship with Jacobson was always lukewarm. When Jacobson suggested that Munch paint his portrait, Munch complied by representing him in the painting as a somewhat domineering figure, though Jacobson actually didn't like it that much, although the portrait is now considered one of Munch's best. Along with other paintings, Munch also completed a journal of his stay at Jacobson's clinic, which was later published as The Mad Poet's Diary. While Munch had initially planned to stay only 8 months, he didn't actually leave the clinic until 1909. It was an expensive stay for him, no socialized medicine back then, and he needed to borrow money to cover the costs, as well as continue caring for his surviving family members. Still, when he finally left the clinic, Edvard Munch made quite a spectacle of it. He dressed up in formal wear and made his elaborate goodbyes to the other patients, stating that Peer Gynt bids farewell to his fellow lunatics. Daniel Jacobson offered to accompany him to Oslo and capitalize on some of the publicity over his star patient, but Munch refused. After leaving, Munch never returned to the clinic and rarely referred to it in later years. When Jacobson later sent him a number of sketches that Munch had drawn at the clinic and asked him to autograph them, which would have raised their value considerably, Munch kept the drawings instead. Edvard Munch spent the last 2 decades of his life in relative solitude at his estate in Oslo. He followed enough of Daniel Jacobson's lifestyle recommendations to avoid a repetition of that terrible breakdown of 1907, including avoiding tobacco, alcohol, and poisonous women. Despite a bout of Spanish flu in 1918, he remained relatively healthy throughout his old age, but was overshadowed by the Nazi occupation of Norway in 1940. Ironically, while the Nazis denounced his art as degenerate, many of his paintings were confiscated, and some of his great works, including The Scream, had to be kept hidden. When Munch died in 1944, he received a state funeral, organized by the Nazis, which gave him an unfair reputation as a collaborator. Today, many of Edvard Munch's paintings still invoke themes of life, love, angst, death, and depression. He probably wouldn't have had it any other way. Have you ever wondered why so many ghosts in horror films are female? What is the reason for this? Do they appear to be scarier? If you try to think of two famous film ghosts, you'll probably come up with Samara from The Ring and the old woman from The Shining. Female ghosts have far more interesting stories than male ghosts. They're grieving the loss of their children, they're a wrathful darling, they're mourning the loss of their energetic excellence, or they're attempting to resurrect themselves by engaging in sexual relations with a living person. But before we look at the famous female ghosts and urban legends from around the world, let me tell you a quick story of unfinished business. There's a ghost in town, you know, and not one of the harmless ones either. She died of a broken heart after the loss of her daughter. If you're sensitive, you can see her walking the streets, screaming and rending her clothes. She says she won't rest until she's found out who murdered her child. And she means it. Her daughter's boyfriend thrown out of the window over and over. Her school rival's face pressed against an iron. Her father, the ghost's husband, nearly drowned in a bathtub. She appears, hurling accusations, and hurts you until you confess. It usually doesn't take long, but she still doesn't move on and realizes it's a lie, so she leaves and finds the next person on the list. Sometimes her screams become sobs. What if it was some wandering vagrant who left town weeks ago? Some serial killers who picked a random target they have no connection to? What if she never learns who took her daughter away? I try to tell her. She does know, of course. I point to the note. I tell her over and over, "No one killed me. I took my own life. You don't need to keep hurting people. It was all my fault." And she leans down and gently takes my skeletal face in bony hands and shakes her head. "Of course you didn't. I know my daughter. I always accepted you. I did everything I could to make you happy. You wouldn't do this. Someone faked the note. I know it. I was a good mom. You wouldn't have done this." I try to explain over and over, but she's not listening. The suspect's the local priest now. She'd never quite trusted him anyway. My guilt is no match for her rage, so all I can do is watch as she floats away. Shortly, I hear screams from the church. There's a ghost in town, you know, and not one of the harmless ones either. Some of the scariest ghosts and urban legends are female, from Bloody Mary to the White Lady. Have you seen any of these women? The Vanished Hitchhiker. This one appears to be straight out of terrifying stories, and it is one of the most well-known urban legends of all time. The story tends to differ from teller to teller, but the basic premise is that the Vanishing Hitchhiker is an urban legend in which people traveling by vehicle pick up a young, beautiful hitchhiker. They drive her home and notice that she's vanished when they park. The person who answers the door informs them that the girl died many years ago. There's a similar story which is about two travelers sitting next to each other on a train, normally a man and a woman. One of them's reading a book, the other person asks what the book is about. The first person says that it's about ghosts, and then they have a conversation about ghosts. The second person then asks if the first person believes in ghosts or has ever seen one, to which the first person says that they've never seen or believed in ghosts at all. The second person then says that this is doubtful, and with that the second person vanishes. This was the version used in the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark book series. La Llorona, or La Llorona, Weeping Woman, the Wailing Woman, or the Crier, is an oral legend about the ghost of a woman who steals children to drown them. La Llorona is always crying when you see her. She's crying because she killed her children. There are multiple versions to this story as well. The legend states a lady was unloved by her husband, but the husband adored their two children. She caught her husband with another lady and drowned her children in a river. Out of pain and outrage, she at that point drowned herself. She was denied passage to paradise until she found the spirits of her two children. She cries and moans and takes youngsters and suffocates them in the stream that she and her children suffocated in themselves. The legend represents La Llorona as an individual or as a ghost. In one variation, the lore states that after giving birth to and raising two sons, an aging wife felt that her husband fell out of love with her and only loved their sons. After catching her husband cheating on her with a younger woman, she was consumed by grief and anger, so she drowned her sons in a river to punish her husband, then drowned herself as well because of what she had done. She was tricked by a demon that told her son's souls were lost, but she'd be granted entry to heaven if she found their lost souls and brought them to heaven where they belonged. The demon knew that her son's souls were already in heaven, so the woman would be stuck in the land of the living trying to find her sons forever, crying constantly for the sins she committed. After having spent a long time without finding her sons, her grief and her desperation to just be able to die and be at peace caused her to start taking other children's souls by drowning them. The Slit-Mouthed Woman. This famous Japanese ghost is a woman who targets children. She's usually wearing a mask over her lower jaw. According to the legend, she asks her victims if they think that she's attractive. If they respond with no, she will kill them with her weapon. If they say yes, she will reveal that the corners of her mouth are slit from ear to ear, and she will then repeat her question. If the individual then replies with no, she will kill them with her weapon. If they say yes, she will cut the corners of their mouth in such a way that resembles her own disfigurement. While as horrifying as she sounds, there are some methods to escape from the slit-mouthed woman, methods including answering her question, "Am I pretty?" by saying "average," or by distracting her with money or hard candy. As per legend, Kuchisake Anna, the slit-mouthed woman, was mutilated during her life, with her mouth being cut from ear to ear. In certain variants of the story, she was the double-crossing spouse or courtesan of a samurai during her life. As discipline for her unfaithfulness, her better half cut the edges of her mouth from ear to ear. Other forms of the story incorporate that her mouth was ruined during a clinical or dental method, she was mangled by a lady who was desirous of her magnificence, or that her mouth is loaded up with various sharp teeth. Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn was famously beheaded on the orders of her husband Henry VIII when he was frustrated that she didn't bear him a son and heir. The ghost of Anne Boleyn is said to haunt the Tower of London, where she was imprisoned before she died. The king divorced her and beheaded her for not giving him a male heir and accused her of black magic and incest. Anne's ghost has her head, thankfully, but she is still said to frighten passers-by as she wanders through the halls. She's even been seen in other historic buildings. She's probably looking for justice, poor Anne. The ghost of Sir Thomas, Anne Boleyn's father, is also believed to haunt the Tower of London, having been cursed for taking no action to prevent two of his children being executed by Henry VIII. La Planchada. La Planchada in Spanish means the Ironed Lady, assuming that I am saying it correctly. La Planchada is a well-known ghost legend in Mexico and the southwestern part of the U.S. It's a story of a ghostly nurse who is seen in hospitals in central Mexico in urban areas. The nurse is seen wearing an old-fashioned nurse uniform. Here's the backstory. In the 1930s, a nurse named Eulalia worked at the hospital. She always wore a clean, crisply ironed uniform. She was an excellent nurse, and her patients were lucky to have her. Soon, this changed when a handsome doctor entered her life. They got engaged and started living a happy life. Shortly after the engagement, the doctor left to attend a seminar, and to Eulalia's concern, he did not return the following week. Several weeks later, she found out that he found another woman while there and married her. This left her heartbroken, and she lapsed into depression. She was so distracted by the pain that she became ill herself and died in the hospital where she worked. After her death, multiple staff members started experiencing strange things in the emergency room. Some believed that she glows and floats in the hospital corridors, while some believed that she walked normally but her footsteps are not heard. Hospital staff started to call the ghost La Planchada because she always appears wearing a clean, freshly pressed uniform. And there are various versions of this story as well. In one of the versions, Eulalia was a cruel nurse who didn't treat her patients right, and due to that she was being punished to take care of the patients for eternity. Kate Batts. The legend of the Bell Witch is probably one of the most famous pieces of Southern lore. It's a story of a spirit who tormented the Bell family. In 1817, a man named John Bell and his family began experiencing ghostly happenings in their Tennessee home. The poltergeist-like activity, things being thrown, strange sounds, sugar being taken from the bowls, ghostly laughter, spooked animals, it was all thought to be caused by a witch named Kate Batts. However, it was later found that daughter Betsy was probably causing the activity. However, the Bell Witch lives on. The Blair Witch Project was based in part on the Bell Witch legend. Bloody Mary. Standing in the dark bathroom facing a mirror and chanting her name 3 times, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, and Bloody Mary's ghost is said to appear right behind you, sometimes holding a baby, other times telling you how she will come after you. Bloody Mary's a folklore legend consisting of a ghost phantom or spirit conjured to reveal the future. She's said to appear in a mirror when her name is chanted repeatedly. Bloody Mary appearances are mostly witnessed in a group participation play. Bloody Mary's story originated with Queen Mary I being childless, and thus she was replaced by her husband with another woman. When you dim the lights and repeat her name in the mirror 3 times, she thinks you are taunting her for being childless. When Weird Darkness returns, I have a story from one of our Weirdo family members. Plus, I'll answer a few emails I received recently in the Chamber of Comments. If you or someone you know struggles with depression or dark thoughts, I'd like to recommend the Hope in the Darkness page at WeirdDarkness.com. There, I've gathered resources to help fight depression with the 7 Cups app, connecting you with people who've also struggled with depression and are there to lift you up. Even professional listeners there to listen at all hours of the day. If you're having dark thoughts of harming yourself or worse, there's the Suicide Prevention Lifeline that you can either call or chat online with anytime 24/7. The folks at ifred.org are doing what they can with research and education on depression to give us the tools we need to fight against it in the days ahead. And if you feel a lack of hope in your life, take the 30-Day Global Hope Challenge. It's absolutely free. You can do it alone or with a friend or with a group. And after 30 days, you'll have a better understanding of how to build hope in your own life and in the life of others. You can find all of this on the Hope in the Darkness page at WeirdDarkness.com.
Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy killed 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock. Peacock fuels your true crime obsession with exclusive new originals like John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise.
He said to me, clowns can get away with murder.
Dr. Death, the undoctored story.
This guy's dangerous.
And Epstein's shadow, Ghislaine Maxwell.
She inherited Jeffrey Epstein's secrets.
There was this whole other world going on.
Plus the most bingeable crime series, Buried in the Backyard and Snapped. And with the Dateline 24/7 channel that's always on.
Did you want her dead?
You can't not obsess. Sign up now at PeacockTV.com. Peacock fuels your true crime obsession with exclusive new originals like John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise.
He said to me, clowns can get away with murder.
Dr. Death, the undoctored story.
This guy's dangerous.
And Epstein's shadow, Ghislaine Maxwell.
She inherited Jeffrey Epstein's secrets.
There was this whole other world going on.
Plus the most bingeable crime series, Buried in the Backyard and Snapped. And with the Dateline 24/7 channel that's always on.
Did you want her dead?
You can't not obsess. Sign up now at PeacockTV.com.
Subscribe to the Weird Darkness newsletter, and you could be my next winner in my monthly random drawing. Each month, one person wins a Weird Darkness prize pack, including an extra-large Weird Darkness poster, a coffee mug, 2 magnets, and 2 stickers. Sign up for the newsletter for free at WeirdDarkness.com. One of our Weirdo family members sent this one in, and they only wanted to share their first name for credit. It's titled Something Above Us, written by Norman. When I was around 10 or 11 years old, I went on a road trip with my mother, her close friend, and her daughter. Jenny, the daughter, and I were about the same age. We grew up together and were childhood friends. My mother and her mother were close friends, and that's how we met. I used to go to her house after school and watch TV, play video games, go swimming in her pool while our mothers caught up to chat and have coffee. I remember one day my mother told me, "We're going on a trip with Jenny," and I was pretty excited about the news. The trip was from Cairns to Townsville, which was around a 4-hour drive in far north Queensland. We were going to stay the night with some friends of my mother's. I slept for most of the drive and remember being woken up by Jenny. "We're here! We're here!" I remember looking through the front windscreen of the car from the back seat. I saw a driveway leading to a very modern-looking house with large trees to the side and behind it. We got out of the car and made our way inside the house. I didn't know anyone who lived there. I was introduced to a couple who had a daughter around the same age as us and also a baby. That night our parents all went out for dinner. Jenny and I stayed home to watch movies with our new friend and to also babysit the baby. It was getting late, and we all decided to go to bed. I was woken up by a terrified Jenny. She was freaking out and couldn't keep still. She seemed to have lost all composure. "There's something above us," she told me. I wasn't fully awake when she told me. I sat up on my bed and wiped my eyes to try and understand what she was really saying. When I gathered myself, I was in shock. What I felt and saw was nothing I've ever experienced in my life. The room I was sleeping in was shaking like a small earthquake, but it seemed to be vibrating rather than shaking. We both were too scared to leave the bedroom. We laid on the floor and hid beside the bed away from the window. We could hear a buzzing sound. We could feel the buzzing sound through our bodies. The buzzing came and went in intervals. When the buzzing got louder, we saw a light outside illuminating the backyard, like it was daytime. Jenny and I both saw it and were puzzled. It must have been around 11 p.m. at night. When the buzzing went quiet, the light disappeared, and it was nighttime again. This happened for quite some time. We had enough. We both ran out of the bedroom to try and find the other girl and the baby. When we opened the door, we could see the living room. There was a window next to the front door overlooking the front yard. What we saw was the most frightening thing ever. We were standing right in between our bedroom and the front door window just across from the living room. We noticed that when the buzzing sound got quiet from our bedroom and the blinding light was gone, it actually went from the backyard to the front yard. It was like the front yard was daytime and the backyard was nighttime, and it kept on switching back and forth along with the very disabling buzzing sound going through our bodies. We didn't believe our own eyes. We went to the other room where the girl was sleeping in. She was crying and didn't know what was happening. She was worried about the baby in the other room. All three of us went to the baby's room to make sure the baby was safe. We opened the door to the room and couldn't believe our eyes. The baby's cot was swinging back and forth by itself, and the baby was crying. We were frozen with fear. Then we all lost time. I woke up in bed. It was the next morning, and I couldn't remember the moments after I went into the baby's room. I could still remember the buzzing sound and the blinding light shining over the yard. Jenny and I didn't tell our parents about what happened. We were too shocked, and we couldn't describe exactly what happened that night. We went outside to the backyard to see if we could see any changes or any signs of what happened. As we were walking around, we saw the lawn was burnt. It was a black circle, and the green grass had turned brown and dry to the touch. We were freaking out. We knew something happened, and it wasn't just our imagination or some dream. The house next door was being built and basically was a construction site. It had the walls up, but only the framework. After we checked the backyard, we decided to go and have a closer look at the construction site next door. There was a weird feeling coming from this site. We thought maybe there could be some evidence from what happened last night, somewhere here in this half-built house. We started walking towards the house, and then I stopped. I saw something run from behind a wall to another wall. We ran back to our house as fast as we could. I didn't look back. It looked like a small human, skinny and white, no clothes on. Jenny and I never really talked about this as we got older. I'm 35 now, and I will never forget that night that we had something above us. Here in the Chamber of Comments, I answer the emails that I've been sent recently. If you'd like to email me, you can do so anytime at Darren, that's D-A-R-R-E-N, at WeirdDarkness.com. Darren at WeirdDarkness.com. Got an email from Dale in Poquoson, Virginia. He said, "Hey Darren, I've been listening for a few years now and love the show. I don't miss a single one. On the June 15th show, you were talking about phone calls from the dead. I'm pretty sure I experienced one of those years ago. My mother died in 1991, and she was the youngest of 3 daughters. Her middle sister died 4 months after that. Of course, I volunteered to be a pallbearer for her funeral as her sons served in the same capacity for my mother's funeral. After the funeral, we were back at home and had just come into the house and hadn't yet changed into more casual clothes. That's when my phone rang. Remember, it was 1991, so today's smartphones hadn't been invented yet. I had one of the popular flip phones like most people had. I looked at the number, and it wasn't formatted as a regular phone number, area code followed by 3 numbers, then a dash, and then the last 4 numbers. It was just a long line of numbers. I really wished I'd made a point of documenting the number. I wonder if it had any relationship to anything in particular. When I answered the phone, it was just static. I've never had a similar call before or after this particular call. I'm convinced this was my mom thanking me for being part of her sister's funeral. Just curious if any of your listeners have had similar experiences. Thanks for the great show. Dale, Pocosin, Virginia. Well, thank you for the email, Dale. Well, I've just read your email in the show, so if anybody else has had something similar happen to them, maybe they can write in and tell us. But I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to predict that this is just horrible cell service that you were experiencing because you were an AT&T customer. Got an email from Lisa. She said, "Good afternoon. I hope I'm not being too nosy. I saw your post about sleeping 14 hours a day and the migraines you have and the depression. I was there years ago. All I wanted to do was sleep. Woke up with awful headaches which led to me being depressed. I totally understand. My heart goes out to you. I'd like to suggest if you don't mind getting a sleep study. After I had mine and was started on therapy, life changed for me. It was a blessing to be able to get a good night's sleep and feel better the next day. I hope you find some relief soon. Love your podcast. The one about the girls from Locust Grove, Oklahoma was very interesting. I just wish they would have found the killers. Take care and thanks for all you do. GIF bless. Signed, Lisa." GIF? GIF bless? Now, I've heard of God bless, which I use daily, but GIF bless? G-I-F? That's a new one for me. So, am I being blessed by an internet meme? I'm guessing that was probably just a typo on your part. Either that or I'm an old fuddy-duddy who doesn't know modern slang, probably the latter. Either way. As for the sleep study, yeah, actually I did have one done many years ago. In fact, that's when I found out I had sleep apnea, one of the many, many things that has gone wrong with my body over the past 20 years. Fortunately, that issue has been resolved with a CPAP machine. Otherwise, that 12 to 14 hours of sleep that I was talking about in the Facebook group would be closer to 24 hours of sleep because I would never get any rest at all. But you know what, Lisa, thank you so much for your concern and for caring enough to email about it. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Got an email from Yoki. She said, "As I deal with anxiety and depression, I understand the fight you go through. I might not have the type of depression you do, but as a fan of your podcast, I want to say that we understand if you need a break from your own mental health. Take as much time as you need and know that you'll be prayed for. As I am a YouTube creator, I can also relate to needing to take a break from my Judeo-Christian theological channel to deal with my life, like I did when my maternal grandfather was dying of a lifelong condition, or when I was dealing with anxiety or depression or even burnout from creating. Thank you, Mr. Marler, for all you do for mental health and your interesting content. Yoki." Postscript, "May He who created all things, seen and unseen, bring peace to your mind and to your soul." Well, thank you very much, Yoki. I love that last line. And you know what? You were very accurate in saying that we all need to take a break sometimes. I mean, even if it's just a mental health day here and there. I'm not one to take vacations. That's never really been my thing, but I do need to take days off once in a while. So, now, I didn't mean to get quite so dramatic on Facebook in the Facebook group. That was probably the depression making it unnecessarily dramatic, but just to let you and everybody else who's listening know, I'm actually doing very well right now. Thank you for the prayers and for the thoughts. In fact, I'll just give you guys a quick update because I want to be completely open about what I go through, because I know a lot of you actually are kind of looking to me as someone who can give them guidance when it comes to depression and stuff. And it's an interesting position to be in because usually if you're in depression, you don't want to share stuff. You don't want to talk to people if you're being depressed, but I'm in a position where I kind of have to because it's kind of expected. But anyway, I went to a new doctor earlier this week, and after my conversation with him and the treatment that he's prescribing, I'm actually really excited that I might start feeling like my old self very soon, something I have not been in probably 10 years or more. One possible factor for depression, in men specifically, is low testosterone. It's not believed to cause depression, but it can be a contributing factor to making it more severe, if I remember that right. Low testosterone's also been linked to migraines, ding, low or no energy, ding, low or no libido, ding, weakness and foggy-headedness, ding, and a myriad other issues. That's my life. Anyway, if the testosterone treatment does nothing but just clear out the cobwebs in my brain and make it so I don't have to sleep for 12 or more hours a day, it'll totally be worth it. We just have to convince my insurance company to cover it now. There's some confusion about that right now, so they're putting off actually giving me the prescription until everything is all sorted out. So I'll be keeping folks in the Facebook group apprised of what's happening because I know that they're really more involved in the whole what's happening in Darren's life thing. But anyway, thank you so much, Yoki, for your email. I really appreciate it. If anybody does want to join the Facebook group, you can find it on the Contact Social page at WeirdDarkness.com, or just look for Weird Darkness Weirdos Facebook group and you can find it that way. Speaking of insurance, I got an email from Brandy. She said, "Hi Darren, I just want to say that I freaking love your podcast. I must admit, a few months ago I had never even listened to a podcast before until a friend of mine mentioned yours. I decided to give it a listen and was hooked. Yours has set the bar pretty high for any other podcast I might try. Most don't meet my expectations. I work at home in the insurance business, and let me tell you that is one dull profession. So your podcast has helped me get through the day. I was listening to an episode about Bigfoot in Oklahoma not too long ago, which really piqued my interest since I'm an Oklahoma native. Later that day, after hearing that episode, I coincidentally came across an article that advertised a $3 million bounty to whoever finds Bigfoot in Oklahoma. And I tell you what, if I could quit my insurance job and be a full-time Bigfoot hunter, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Love what you do, love what you're about, and love your talent. Please keep up the good work. Sincerely, signed, Brandy." Well, so there you go, Brandy. Quit your job, buy a dump truck-sized load of bananas, and go hunting in Oklahoma for Sasquatch. And you are right. That would have to be a better gig than selling insurance. That being said, though, like I was just talking about with insurance, I'm kind of thankful for having insurance. So you know what? You might be bored at your job, but you are providing a service that people really do need. I was thinking about this as I was reading your letter and trying to figure out a way to respond to it, and I came up with an idea for you. Why don't you combine the two? Move back to Oklahoma and start up your insurance agency there and hunt for Bigfoot in your spare time, but also at the insurance company offer coverage to protect against Bigfoot attacks. There you go, $2 a month, you're covered for any incident by Sasquatch that causes damage to you, your family, or your property, providing that you have proof it was Bigfoot that did it. You could also sell coverage for poltergeist damage while you're at it. I mean, you'd be the perfect official insurance of Weird Darkness. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please share it with someone you know who loves the paranormal or strange stories, true crime, monsters, or unsolved mysteries like you do. You can email me anytime with your questions or comments at darren@weirddarkness.com. Darren is D-A-R-R-E-N. And you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Minds, MeWe, and the show's Weirdos Facebook group on the Contact Social page at weirddarkness.com. Also on the website, if you have a true paranormal or creepy tale to tell, click on Tell Your Story, or better yet, call the Dark Line toll-free at 1-877-277-5944. That's 1-877-277-5944. And if you're listening on the radio, be sure to also subscribe to the podcast where I upload episodes 7 days a week. All stories in Weird Darkness are purported to be true unless stated otherwise, and you can find source links or links to the authors in the show notes. On the Edge of Time was by Tim Swartz for UFO Review. Curing Edvard Munch is by Dr. Romeo Vitelli for Providentia. And Infamous Female Ghosts and Urban Legends was posted at buggedspace.com. Weird Darkness is a production of Marlar House Productions. Copyright Weird Darkness 2021. And now that we're coming out of the dark, I'll leave you with a little light. Deuteronomy 4, verse 29. But if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find Him if you look for Him with all your heart and with all your soul. And a final thought by Eleanor Roosevelt. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. I'm Darren Marlar. Thanks for joining me in the Weird Darkness.
Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy killed 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock. Streaming only on Peacock. Ghislaine Maxwell had it all until she met Jeffrey Epstein.
Ghislaine Maxwell's charged with enticement of minors, sex trafficking of children, and perjury.
Epstein's Shadow, Ghislaine Maxwell. Streaming now, only on Peacock. Peacock fuels your true crime obsession with exclusive new originals like John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise.
He said to me, clowns can get away with murder.
Dr. Death, the undoctored story.
This guy's dangerous.
And Epstein's Shadow, Ghislaine Maxwell.
She inherited Jeffrey Epstein's secrets.
There was this whole other world going on.
Plus the most bingeable crime series, Buried in the Backyard and Snapped. And with the Dateline 24/7 channel that's always on.
Did you want her dead?
You can't not obsess. Sign up now at peacocktv.com.
When I was younger, I tended to put all of myself into what I enjoyed doing, but I began feeling the consequences of living like that when I hit my 40s. Fortunately, my bad back and aching knee, they're not an issue now because I use CBD oils. I've been a proponent for CBD oil for years, but now I'm able to not only introduce it to you but also give you a discount on it. My friends at Extract Labs have set it up for you to get anything and everything on their website for 15% off. Just use the promo code WEIRD15 at checkout. Studies have shown that CBD can help with depression in many cases as well. It certainly has for me. I've also started using CBG oil as well, and I take the capsules that combine both CBD and CBG, so I'm covered with one gel capsule. But there are numerous ways to use CBD oils – bath bombs, body rubs, muscle creams, face creams, candy bars, powders for cooking, and more. They even have products specifically to help your pets. Plus, all of their products come THC-free, so you don't have to worry about psychoactive properties like other hemp-related products. If you're a CBD user already, or if it's something you just want to try, visit WeirdDarkness.com/CBD and take a look at all the products available. That's WeirdDarkness.com/CBD. And remember, use the promo code WEIRD15, all one word, at checkout, and you can save 15% on your entire purchase. That's WeirdDarkness.com/CBD, and then use the promo code WEIRD15 at checkout.
Stories and content in Weird Darkness can be disturbing for some listeners and is intended for mature audiences only. Parental discretion is strongly advised.
In the 1968 film Rosemary's Baby, a failing actor agrees to give up his wife's womb to Satan so he can have a taste of fame. When it was released to America, it was an instant hit, but there's long been a rumor that the satanic overtones of the film imbued the picture with a curse that the cast and crew suffered from the moment the film went into production. The Rosemary's Baby movie curse has allegedly afflicted everyone involved, with the film's director and producer receiving the brunt of the bad luck. There were plenty of bad things that happened during the filming of Rosemary's Baby, but the curse claimed most of its targets shortly after the film went to theaters. Rumors of cursed movie sets have been a norm in Hollywood since the Golden Age, but they've rarely amounted to anything more than, well, rumors. However, the sheer amount of Rosemary's Baby filming tragedies gives credence to the idea that there was actually a curse unlocked during filming of one of the most satanic movies in Hollywood history. I'm Darren Marlar, and this is Weird Darkness. Welcome, Weirdos! I'm Darren Marlar, and this is Weird Darkness. Here you'll find stories of the paranormal, supernatural, legends, lore, crime, conspiracy, mysterious, macabre, unsolved, and unexplained. If you're new here, welcome to the show, and if you're already a member of this weirdo family, please take a moment and invite someone else to listen. Recommending Weird Darkness to others helps make it possible for me to keep doing the show. And while you're listening, be sure to check out WeirdDarkness.com, where you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Minds, MeWe, and more, along with the Weird Darkness Weirdos Facebook group. Coming up in this episode, the movie The Sixth Sense has become a worldwide meme with the phrase, "I see dead people." But for one family in Britain, it's not a joking matter. Barbara and Patricia Grimes were murdered in 1956, but new clues have raised hopes the killer might still be caught. In space, no one can hear you scream. Not just a movie tagline, but reality for astronauts reporting some of the strangest things they've encountered while outside our atmosphere. But first, Rosemary's Baby was a hit novel that became an iconic film, only to bring woe to nearly everyone who made it. We'll look at the film, which many people believe to be cursed. We'll also look at some real-life cases of women who believed they were pregnant with a demon child. And if you're pregnant, how can you tell if you are pregnant with the child of Lucifer? There are a few signs to look for. We begin with Rosemary's Baby. Now, bolt your doors, lock your windows, turn off your lights, and come with me into the weird darkness. In 1967, Ira Levin was already, by most anyone's standards, a very, very successful writer. At the age of 21, he had sold 2 TV scripts to NBC. Soon after, a Broadway play garnered a Tony nod, and his first novel, in which a ruthless young man murders his pregnant lover, won the 1954 Edgar Award. But with every hit also came a flop, and success always seemed to come with a cost, a theme rooted deeply in all his best works, especially Rosemary's Baby. A hit novel turned iconic film, Rosemary's Baby was a massive success that, according to half a century of pop culture lore, is also cursed. Did Levin's tale of lapsed Christian Rosemary, who unknowingly carries and births the devil in return for her actor husband's stage success, really jinx all those who got near it? And if so, why did Levin himself stay so seemingly unscathed? Like all good scary stories, this one starts out very ordinary. In 1965, struggling as always for his next big idea, Levin looked no further than his pregnant wife in their New York apartment. He plopped every would-be parent's feelings of anxiety atop an imminent historical moment. June 1966, or 666, aka the number of the beast, as predicted in the New Testament's Book of Revelation. Religious counterculture was already swirling. The Church of Satan was soon to be established in San Francisco, and in April 1966, Time magazine had just famously asked on its cover, "Is God dead?" Levin went even darker. What if he took the birth of Jesus and turned the whole tale upside down? What if God was not only dead, but the devil lived? A Jewish atheist, Levin nonetheless wrote with mounting reservations. He was sort of taking notes, he said, of his wife's progress, alongside Rosemary's, but flatly refused to let her read the manuscript. His fears were both personal and professional. The book was blasphemy, perhaps, and Levin feared backlash, blacklisting from publishers, or much worse. Rosemary's Baby was instead immediately declared perfect, the best horror novel ever crafted, a modern masterpiece. Rave reviews ran in every paper. Truman Capote likened Levin to Henry James. 4 million copies flew off store shelves. Levin, not unlike the greedy antagonist in one of his own success-obsessed works, was granted the wildest level of literary success that he might ever have hoped for. A year later, the success only continued with The Movie, directed by Roman Polanski, a European auteur looking for his own big Hollywood break. More impeccable reviews. Roger Ebert wrote Polanski outdoes Hitchcock. Liz Smith in Cosmopolitan called it sheer perfection. Variety praised just about everyone involved. Polanski had triumphed. Star Mia Farrow was outstanding. Composer Christoph Komeda's score was top-notch, and producer William Castle had crossed an artistic Rubicon. Soon after, the curse began. The first unlucky soul was Komeda. Details of his death are still scarce even today, but Polanski told it this way. In autumn of 1968, then 37-year-old Komeda was roughhousing at a party when he fell off a rocky escarpment and into a 4-month coma, the very same affliction Levin's witches used to kill Rosemary's suspicious friend in the book. Komeda never regained consciousness and died in Poland the following year. In April 1969, producer William Castle, sick with worry from the hate mail he received constantly, was suddenly stricken with severe kidney stones. While delirious in the hospital, he hallucinated scenes from the film and was said to have yelled, "Rosemary, for God's sake, drop the knife!" Castle recovered, just barely, and never made a Hollywood hit again. Then there is Polanski's fate, told and retold into legend even by him. Polanski had relocated to California alongside his new girlfriend, actress Sharon Tate, who was fresh off her first movie role as a witch in Eye of the Devil, just before filming began on Rosemary's Baby. She had gunned hard for the lead role in Rosemary's Baby, but Paramount cast Mia Farrow. Tate instead loitered around the set, appearing uncredited like a ghost in the background of Rosemary's young people-only party scene, and, say some, becoming increasingly obsessed with the occult. Many years later, a friend quoted her in print as having said, "The devil is beautiful. Most people think he's ugly, but he's not." Polanski last saw Tate, by then his wife and very pregnant, in July 1969, noting in his autobiography a grotesque thought that he had at the time. "You will never see her again," he wrote. Tate was brutally murdered on August 8th by the Manson family, as was their unborn son, all while Rosemary's Baby still lingered in theaters. Unable to make sense of such a tragedy and captivated by the stories of the Manson family, the public took to Satan and curses as the only explanation. Internet fanatics say, like Guy Woodhouse, Polanski made his young wife a blood sacrifice for his still untouchable status in Hollywood and beyond. Others maintain the Manson murders were a mere moment in a grand satanic conspiracy scored by the Beatles. The White Album was written largely at an Indian meditation, with Mia Farrow in attendance. The song title, Helter Skelter, albeit misspelled, was scrawled in blood at the crime scene. And, a dozen years later, Lennon was assassinated across the street from the Dakota, the gabled landmark where Rosemary's Baby was filmed. But if Rosemary's Baby is actually cursed, how did the writer of the novel, Ira Levin, dodge his fate? He didn't, of course. While Levin never fell from a cliff to his dramatic demise, he suffered a more fitting kind of poetic justice. First, his marriage crumbled, with the divorce finalized in 1968. Notoriously private, Levin never gave details of the breakup, though The Stepford Wives, published 4 years later, maybe says it all. He never rode the Rosemary's Baby wave into Hollywood, perhaps a blessing in disguise, but he certainly got the fame he sought. Catholics in particular bombarded him with ongoing criticism, as did the Catholic Church, which very publicly slapped a C rating for Condemned onto the film for its mockery of religious persons and practices. Levin didn't believe in witches or curses, he said over and again, yet fear grew in him just the same. On a 1980 episode of The Dick Cavett Show, appearing alongside a gregarious Stephen King, Levin sits quiet, pensive and insecure. "I don't recall being scared at all," he said of his childhood horror inspirations. "Now I'm terrified." By 1992, in a rare interview, Levin confessed to having mixed feelings about Rosemary's Baby, including religious guilt. His work had played a significant part in all this popularization of the occult and belief in witchcraft and Satanism, he acknowledged, while in the same breath dismissing all these people who hear backward messages in song lyrics and stuff like that. Then, in a rare admission of regret, he said, "I really feel a certain degree of guilt about having fostered that kind of irrationality." But his family is adamant that the regret wasn't in the book. It was in something else, said novelist David Morrell, co-founder of the International Thriller Writers Organization and former University of Iowa professor of English, who wrote a new intro to Rosemary's Baby for its 50th birthday reissue. After decades of endless copycats and spin-offs and made-for-TV movies that made the book feel like a campy caricature, Levin grew seemingly disdainful of his defining work. He wrote less and to less acclaim, rarely did interviews, and stopped mingling among the New York literary circles he once so desperately wanted to be a part of. If Levin ever really experienced or enjoyed his literary fame, he didn't say so. "I never once heard him comment on his career or what had happened," said Morrell. "I'm just intuiting that he had to know he was a success, but I'm not sure he did." Instead, when Rosemary's Baby's last big anniversary rolled around, Levin phoned in a poorly planned sequel, Son of Rosemary, which was widely panned and quickly forgotten. Yet it became a bestseller just the same, funding Levin's last decade until his death in 2007 and becoming a sort of cruel ongoing joke about the fleeting and arbitrary nature of success. Of course, I didn't send back any of the royalty checks, he deadpanned, poking fun at himself as a sellout and fraud. It was one of those jokes that's half true, and it was the last book he ever wrote. Up next, real cases of women who were convinced they truly were carrying a demon child during their pregnancies. Plus, how do you know if you're carrying a demon spawn in your own pregnancy? These stories and more when Weird Darkness returns. Have you checked out the brand new Monster Channel? It has horror hosts, B-horror movies, retro television commercials, and a whole lot more. You can watch it anytime, 24/7, 365 on the Monster Channel page at WeirdDarkness.com. It's also where we hold our Weirdo Watch Parties each month. Get your monster movie fix on the Monster Channel at WeirdDarkness.com.
Peacock fuels your true crime obsession with exclusive new originals. John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise.
Clowns can get away with murder.
And Epstein's Shadow, Ghislaine Maxwell.
She inherited Jeffrey Epstein's secrets.
Plus the most bingeable crime series, Snapped. Sign up now at PeacockTV.com. Peacock fuels your true crime obsession with exclusive new originals. John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise.
Clowns can get away with murder.
And Epstein's Shadow, Ghislaine Maxwell.
She inherited Jeffrey Epstein's secrets.
Plus the most bingeable crime series, Snapped. Sign up now at PeacockTV.com. Streaming only on Peacock.
What do you know about Dr. Dunch?
He was charming, intelligent.
My patients mean everything to me.
Based on the unbelievable true story.
I can't make sense of it.
Dunch has 2 deaths that we know of. The state of Texas has executed people for less.
It's like he knew what he was supposed to do.
And he did the exact opposite.
Dr. Death, starring Joshua Jackson with Christian Slater and Alec Baldwin.
I am going to fix you.
All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock.
If you like Weird Darkness, you'll love the audiobooks I've narrated, many of which are absolutely free to listen to, including free audiobooks by Stephen King, H.P. Lovecraft, Charles Dickens, and more. You can see all of the free audiobooks I've narrated on the audiobooks page at WeirdDarkness.com. Researching stories of satanic pregnancy and locating women who truly believe that they've carried Satan's spawn is more difficult than it might seem. The world will always welcome kaleidoscope-eyed acolytes in peasant smocks and Manson-following concubines with swastikas carved into their foreheads, it's true. But bearers of the Antichrist don't always get so lucky. Some in-real-life Rosemary Woodhouses hail from the colonial era, when Satan was basically a household name. Some come from present-day tribes stuck 7 centuries back in the time continuum, while others are just goths in love with the smoldering, tormented glamour of the Dark Lord. But all claim to have or have had one thing in common – a womb that has played host to a cloven, mauling, fanged little bundle of joy. In the summer of 2009, San Antonio police stumbled in on a scene that was so gruesome investigators could barely speak. Physician Patrick McNamara, writing in Spirit Possession and Exorcism, History, Psychology, and Neurobiology, claims that believing that one or one's child is possessed by Satan is all too common in schizophrenics with religious delusions. According to official reports, a 3.5-week-old boy lay in the bedroom of a single-story house, 3 of his tiny toes chewed off, his face torn away, his head severed, and his brains ripped out. Officers found the boy's mother, Audie Sanchez, sitting on a couch with a self-inflicted wound to her chest and her throat partially slashed, screaming. She told officers the devil made her do it. Police said psychiatric examiners believed Sanchez suffered from psychosis and was driven to consume her infant, Scotty, as part of a Bacchae-like ritual in which the mother ends and eats her male offspring. According to a 2012 article in the Daily Mail, one of Satan's sons is alive and well in Colombia. At a mere 4 weeks old, the demon child, who had apparently not been named, could already walk by himself and produce fire, or so his aghast mother, Anne Faria Santos, says. She also attests that her son frequently hides around the house, cackles in an adult way for hours on end, and has an intimidating pair of eyes. The article claims that Santos's neighbors, in fear for their lives, had begun pelting the residents with stones. But area lawyers, social workers, and psychologists aren't so sure, and sources say that the mother is being investigated for possible child abuse. The same thing happened to Naomi Watts in The Ring 2 when her son got possessed. In 2016, a 28-year-old Utah mother, Suzanne Connors, made headlines when she gave birth to a screeching entity whom she just as promptly made the sign of the crossover and cast out. Connors said that her pregnancy felt like being cut with razors from the inside, claimed that she decided on adoption because she wanted no part in raising the Antichrist. Reports state that doctors apparently opted for a C-section and found Connors' uterus and amniotic sac completely ripped to shreds. One may assume that the infant was scuttled off, "it's alive" style, but the babe was then taken to a nearby pediatric hospital for evaluation. Superstitions and phobias about demons and witches are legion, but some people don't hesitate to take them to disturbingly literal levels. Such was the case with 21-year-old Rashida Chowdhury, who in August 2015 tossed her newborn son out of the fourth-story window of her apartment in Queens because she believed he was possessed by an evil spirit. Chowdhury's apparently non-interventionist family confirmed that she had indeed been actively harboring a belief that her child was possessed. Moreover, 4 adults and 2, presumably demon-free, other children were in the residence at the time, which made the setup even more suspect. Chowdhury was charged in both the first and second degree and told the NYPD that she'd had no other choice but to hurl her offspring into the symbolic flames below for his own protection. The realization that one has born or is about to bear a demon child doesn't always come early. Some evil spawns are late bloomers, or so one Juanita Gomez appeared to believe. In August of 2016, the 49-year-old Oklahoma mother made headlines when she took the life of her 33-year-old daughter with a crucifix. The Huffington Post reports that officers arrived and found the victim lying in the home with a large cross/crucifix upon her chest. Blood was visible, and she'd suffered severe trauma around her head and face. Juanita Gomez said she believed her daughter was possessed by the devil and was attempting to rid Satan from her body. Specifically, it seems Gomez forced a crucifix and religious medallion down her daughter's throat before cleaning her up and posing her body in the shape of a cross. Gomez does not seem to have expressed any particular interest in the crime after the fact. Her main preoccupation appears to be with her bowels. She's accused officials of providing her with inadequate toilet paper, allegedly complaining in court that she had to use that plastic from the food they give her to wipe her bottom. Another progeny of Satan, but can there be more than one divine inheritor at a time, had the honor of gestating in the womb of a certain Isabella Miroslov of Texas. According to 2014 reports, the encounter came while the avowed Satanist was saying her bedtime chants. All of a sudden, the Dark Lord appeared in the room, ordered her to undress, and then bred her. Miroslav's plans to name the child after his father may seem predictable enough, but there are some inconsistencies in her report that are more troubling. She maintains that her son is supposed to become president at the age of 12 and create a one-world government to later combat the coming of Jesus Christ. Horned, taloned, bat-winged, and snarling, the New Jersey Devil is as American as apple pie. However, his mother, Deborah Leeds, was a Brit. According to historical reports, she and her husband, Japhet, lived in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey in the early to mid-1700s. They had 12 children, and by the time the 13th was conceived in 1735, Deborah Leeds, who by then was past what most people would consider reasonable childbearing age, was in no mood to give birth to it. Some accounts even have her declaring, "May it be a devil," when she learned of her unwelcome condition. There are multiple versions of what happened on the night of the birth. Some claim that Mother Leeds, as she was called, believed from the outset that her 13th child would be a demon because the number 13 was cursed. Others claim that she invoked the devil during her delivery, thereby dooming the baby. The most popular variation, however, claims that the infant, devil or not, was born deformed and that Mother Leeds cared for it until she passed of old age, whereupon it flew off into the swamps. Whatever the case, in the centuries since the New Jersey Devil's birth, there have been numerous sightings of the creature all over southern New Jersey. Born in the French Quarter of New Orleans, legendary voodoo queen Marie Laveau was renowned for her powers as a sorceress and a healer. One of her acquaintances was Camille, the daughter of a prominent Creole family who allegedly angered one of her Creole suitors by throwing him over for a Scotsman. The story goes that Camille's spurned beau approached Laveau and begged her to avenge him by cursing his would-be bride and her child. Shortly thereafter, Camille became pregnant and began having recurring nightmares about her unborn baby being possessed. According to Haunted New Orleans tours, Camille passed during childbirth, but just as she had feared, the infant was not a plump and blushing human baby, but a grotesque and lurid imitation, a horror, a curse. Wails filled the room when the thing was exposed, and all could see where light tufts of hair should be were two lumps, the early roots of horns to come. Where little hands and feet should have been were the claws of some wild animal like a possum or a raccoon. There were scales upon its body. What really happened is anyone's guess, but the babe lives on in infamy as the Devil Baby of Bourbon Street, and some of Marie Laveau's history was chronicled in American Horror Stories' 2016 Roanoke installation. Mother Superior Jeanne des Anges, also known as Joan of the Angels, is famous for having been seduced and impregnated by a demon masquerading as a priest, masquerading as an angel. Basically your classic mix-up. The infamous drama of des Anges began when a gentleman known as Urbain Grandier became a parish priest in London, France. In addition to being good-looking and charismatic, he was said to have been a rabid womanizer who regularly disregarded his vows of celibacy. Jeanne, who had become obsessed with Grandier, alleged that he was the devil who had appeared to her in the guise of a radiant being. She also said that Issacharon, the demon of debauchery, had gotten her with child, and she went through a long psychosomatic pregnancy that was rife with shrieking, convulsions, and babbling tongues. A group of nuns soon joined her in her accusations, and after a lengthy investigation, Father Grandier was summarily tortured and burned at the stake in 1634. Jeanne, who never did bear her demon child, lived more or less piously ever after, and the whole debacle was the subject of two films, Ken Russell's The Devils in 1971 and Jerzy Kowalerwitz's Mother Joan of the Angels in 1961. Jane Addams was an influential figure in Chicago in the late 1800s and early 1900s. She opened up the historic Hull House, a communal gathering place for impoverished immigrants to embrace their shared community and a place for single working women to stay and find safety from the slums. The story postulates that one day 3 working Italian women burst through the doors of Hull House and demanded to see the devil baby. Apparently the baby had cloven hooves, pointed ears, and was able to articulate even though it was an infant. It was also apparently fond of profane language and would curse those that came to visit it. According to Addams, the people attributed her infant to the devil because Addams was allegedly sinful in the child's conception. It's cliché to say that no one knows what to expect when they're expecting, but that applies even more if you are a woman impregnated by the devil. But how do you know if you are carrying a demonic spawn? Similar to knowing whether or not you've been marked by the devil, there are some absolute signs that you are carrying the Antichrist. Perhaps you were involved in a satanic pregnancy ritual, or maybe you've been drinking more blood than usual. Whatever the case, there are numerous signs Satan is near, and all you need to do is to learn which of them are real and which are coincidence. Pledge your eternal allegiance to weird darkness and keep listening. Satan is a tricksy lad, as signs of his temptation and meddling are never obvious, and the ones that are will likely have you sent to an insane asylum if you tell anybody. But once you're carrying the child of Satan, your life isn't as without options as it might seem. Every child needs a mother, even if its father is an ageless evil who has chosen to spend an eternity cackling in his personal fire pit, so you could always do your best to be the monstrosity's mother. Or you could give the child up for adoption. There's no rule saying you have to be the mother of the Antichrist. If any of these signs that you've been impregnated by Satan apply to you, remember to consult a physician or a trusted coven of witches before you make any rash decisions. Chances are you're probably just pregnant with a regular human child. A telltale sign of fostering Satan's unborn child in your womb is the appearance of claw marks or deep gouges across your skin when you wake up in the morning. These won't be your run-of-the-mill scratches that you find the morning after a round of suitably rough intercourse. These scratches will be deeper than the average fingernail marks, and they will likely be in a more animalistic shape than you're used to. If the claw marks have left any symbols across your body like pentagrams, pyramids, ominous squiggles, then you definitely have a demon baby hiding in your body. Odd cravings, of course, are natural when you're pregnant, but one particular craving that you should worry about is the desire to feast upon raw meat. There's simply something you need to satisfy your cravings, whether you're noshing on a bloody steak or a tube of raw beef. You may even want to double down on your urges by drinking blood from the still-beating heart of an innocent. If that's how you feel, then you should start picking out baby names from the Book of Revelations. As soon as you discovered that you were pregnant, did people begin referring to your appearance as wan or hollow? Do you have a jaundiced look to your eyes when there was once a bright light full of hope? Most women report a glow that takes over their body once they're with child. However, those that have been impregnated by a demon, incubus, or Satan himself have been known to take on the look of someone whose very life is being drained from their body. Was it only a week ago that you had amazing intercourse with a handsome stranger who may or may not have had goat eyes, and now you've got a 6-month baby bump? It's never fun to be the bearer of bad news, but it seems like you might be pregnant with a demonic baby. One of the biggest signs that your child is of the nether realm is if it comes to full term quicker than it should. If you enjoy sleeping with sexy, slightly devilish men, either in real life or in your dreams, you should keep a personal planner handy, just to keep track of any pregnancies that occur. Upon feeling a super strong kick from a baby in your womb, many people, especially mothers-in-law, will say something innocuous like, "Feels like you've got a soccer player in there," or "Someone's keeping up with leg day." However, a baby with superhuman strength is an obvious sign that you've not only been violated by a demon, but that you are carrying its seed. Going by ultrasound alone to decipher whether or not your child belongs to Satan is never a safe bet. Ultrasound photos are known to make the inside of your womb look like a funhouse mirror, and while your child may look a bit devilish, it's most likely a regular human baby. If you notice something off about the baby in your ultrasound, like devil horns, goblin ears, or a tail, ask yourself whether or not you've experienced any of the other symptoms we've described here. If the answer is no, and you still feel uneasy, visit a priest. If he suffers a severe nosebleed or flees from your presence, then it's safe to say your suspicions were correct. Even if you take birth control pills religiously, no pun intended, you gotta remember that Satan's semen, or the semen of a demon-possessed human person, is not only super strong but is from the body of the greatest evil in the universe. Thus, there is nothing that prescription medication would be able to do to stop it from working. If you find yourself pregnant despite being on the pill, it might be wise to seek help from your closest priest. As with some other signs on this list, having a sore nether region, ladies, in the morning isn't exactly positive proof that you've been visited in the night by the King of Lies. If you've been having non-demonic sex with somebody on a regular basis, or if your normal means of transportation is a motorcycle or a horse, you probably have nothing to worry about. But if you experience intense pain and have some of the other symptoms on this list, you might have a devil baby inside you. It's rare that women begin to experience telekinesis without having a member of the family pass the gift down to them. So if you suddenly have an uncontrollable ability to knock people over with your mind, you might be with Satan's child. Your best bet is to take a pregnancy test, and if the absorbent sampler changes from white to a blood-red depiction of the crucifix of Christ, then you are 99.9% pregnant with Satan's child. So what have your dreams been like lately? Just the normal stuff? Or have you been visited by a horrific pig man who makes love to you without the societal hang-ups of a normal person but leaves you feeling ashamed with Sumerian symbols etched into your skin afterward? If you were having a lot of dream sex with a demon and now you're preggers, it's probably a sign you're carrying the Lord of the Flies child. Have you been experiencing strange losses of time, especially after sex? Loss of time on its own isn't anything to inspire you to believe that you're carrying the Antichrist. But if it's working in tandem with demon dream sex, telekinesis, or cravings for blood, then you might want to begin panicking. Or you could accept your fate as the mother of Satan's child and lean into it by buying a lot of black clothing. Because Satan and demons operate in the dark to avoid the eyes of God, who has a well-known 10 p.m. bedtime, by the way, it makes sense that most demon child conceptions take place late at night, specifically in dreams. If you begin having dreams of mothering a nightmare child, that may be your body trying to tell you that you've become pregnant with a goat-eyed baby who will tear apart humanity. And if you found yourself to be in the middle of a satanic ritual, willingly or unwillingly, where you may or may not have had intercourse with Satan, a personification of Satan, a lesser demon, or maybe even a possessed regular guy wearing a cloak, then you're probably pregnant with a devil baby. How involved you want to be in this baby's life, well, that's up to you. But if you've always wanted to be a demonic queen who leads an undead horde of abominations, then you should give mothering your devil baby a shot. When Weird Darkness returns, in space, no one can hear you scream. It's not just a movie tagline, it's reality for astronauts reporting some of the strangest things they've encountered while outside our atmosphere. But first, the movie The Sixth Sense has become a worldwide meme with that phrase, "I see dead people." But for one family in Britain, it is not a joking matter. That story is up next. Congratulations to Renee Hardy! She is my winner for July in my newsletter's monthly random drawing. Renee wins an extra-large Weird Darkness poster, 2 coffee mugs, 2 magnets, and 2 stickers. Maybe you could be my winner for next month. Sign up for the Weird Darkness newsletter at WeirdDarkness.com and you're automatically entered to win. And again, congratulations, Renee!
Greenlight is the debit card and app for kids and teens, now with investing. Investing is key to building long-term wealth, and with Greenlight, your kids can learn to invest at any age. They research stocks to buy, invest as little as $1, and you approve every trade. Track progress over time and learn about the world of investing together. Ready to invest in your kids' futures? Visit greenlightcard.com today for your free month trial.
Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy killed 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock. Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy killed 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock.
Subscribe to the Weird Darkness newsletter and you could be my next winner in my monthly random drawing. Each month, one person wins a Weird Darkness prize pack, including an extra-large Weird Darkness poster, a coffee mug, 2 magnets, and 2 stickers. Sign up for the newsletter for free at WeirdDarkness.com. Trembling with fear, 10-year-old Faye Jackson darted out of her bedroom and down the stairs to her mom. She had just seen the wispy image of a person who had hissed into her ear, "Can you hear me?" It was the first of hundreds of ghost sightings that would plague the young girl and lead her to believe she may have psychic powers. Incredibly, Faye's younger brother, Ashley, has now started reporting similar eerie sightings, despite not knowing anything about Faye's. Their mom, Lynn, has come to accept her kids have supernatural powers and that, just like the movie The Sixth Sense, her children can see dead people. To Lynn, by the way, not really her name, we've changed the names in this to protect them, Lynn says this is anything but a special gift. She sees it as a curse that she would love to break. The 39-year-old from Waltham Cross, Hertz, says, "It feels like someone's bullying my children and I can't do anything about it. It would have been easier to deal with if they had an illness. At least I'd know where to go for treatment." Faye's got used to it, and now she enjoys having this ability, but Ashley hates it. Surveys in the United Kingdom show that 1 in 5 Brits have seen or felt the presence of a ghost, and 53% believe in psychic ability. The research coincides with Matt Damon's film Hereafter about a reluctant medium. Faye, now 13 years old, and Ashley, age 8, can relate to that. Stay-at-home mom Lynn says, "The first sign was when Faye started primary school. She used to tell me one of her friends was purple or the teacher was red. So one day I told her, 'No, darling, that boy isn't purple.' She said, 'Mommy, I mean the color around him.'" Now they both believe that Faye was recognizing auras, the glow which is said to radiate around a person. Ghostly sightings started when Faye turned 10 and appeared nearly every day. Once Faye reported her bed being shaken by a frustrated female ghost. Another time she said that she could feel the energy of an old woman against her back while showering. She even says that at times she could feel ghosts playing with her hair. Lynn says, "How do you deal with something like that?" She was terrified. I did start off thinking it might be attention-seeking, but you know your own children. She was shy and not a storyteller. In her skinny jeans and patent Doc Martens, petite Faye today seems at ease with her powers, but her huge blue eyes still betray her fear during one of the most terrifying incidents. She says, "I'd walked out of my bedroom, and there was a mirror at the other end of the hall. In my reflection, I saw a person's head on my shoulder. It was red. I was so scared. But now I understand that it's my granddad and that he is my spirit guide who's protecting me." Faye matter-of-factly goes on to relate how she encounters these unexpected visitors. She says, "It's not like seeing something solid like a chair. It's like a glimpse of the person. Mostly I can sense something or feel the energy there, and the picture and the details come into my head, like their name can pop into my head or how they died. If I close my eyes, I see their picture building up. It happens so quickly. I have all this information in a couple of seconds. I used to be really scared. I wouldn't like the dark, and I wouldn't like looking in the mirror in case I saw something." The double blow came when Ashley began to see ghosts as well. He refuses to discuss the idea that he might be psychic. His mother, Lynn, says, "We'd been careful to keep everything that was going on with Faye from Ashley. I didn't want him to be frightened. Then, about a year ago, he refused to go into our conservatory and wouldn't go to the toilet alone. I asked him what the matter was, and he told me, 'There's a head following me around.' My blood went cold. How do you tell a 7-year-old that some people can see dead people?" Lynn's husband, David, age 45, is clearly concerned and supportive, yet, like Ashley, prefers not to discuss the issue. But supernatural powers might run in the family. Both David's dad and Lynn's grandmother believed they saw spirits. Lynn says, "Faye has tried to tell Ashley it's okay and happens to her, but he doesn't believe her. She's intrigued by it now, but he hates it and is terrified." Through talking to other mediums, Faye has learned to cope with the sightings, but Ashley is very much in denial. Instead, a friend who does distant healing called Theta Healing has focused on Ashley, asking that he doesn't see anything frightening. Lynn believes this has reduced the sightings, but says he still has what he calls bad thoughts. Faye, who has learned to channel her ability into learning Reiki healing, says, "I can close down my chakras, points in the body from the head to the feet. You do it by thinking of those points as light bulbs, and you shut them off so you're closed to the spirits. I can also ask them to go away, and I can imagine a white light around me to protect myself. When it first started, I was seeing spirits every day, but now it isn't as often." Faye adds, "I've only told one friend at school. She was fine about it and accepts it, but I wouldn't tell anyone else because I think they'd tease me. I'd be the witch girl." Lynn and Faye plan to write a book together on their experiences. They've also launched Facebook group Children with Spirit. Lynn says, "One of my issues is that there's no real help out there for people like us. Talking to other psychic children has really helped Faye, so hopefully it can help others too." From a smattering of stars to a breathtaking view of Earth, astronauts see so many awe-inspiring things in space. But sometimes what they see is not only unbelievable, but unexplainable. There are some truly creepy things astronauts have seen in space. Astronauts have reported seeing weird lights, extraterrestrials, and UFOs. Kind of makes you wonder if